Wrestling fans around the corner and around the world, I'm the Big Fat Well.
And I'm the rocker, Marty Jannetty.
And in about 10 seconds, we'll be talking about 90s wrestling straight out of Melrose.
It's going to be a rockin'... Who let the little kids into the studio?
Cut!
Wrestling fans, now you too can look as cool as Monty and the Pharaoh by wearing the official Monty and the Pharaoh sunglasses at night for $8.99 each. That's only $8.99 each. Now available at montyandthepharaoh.com. We know what you're thinking. Did they fire off 6 fascinating points of interest or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all the excitement of watching and listening to Long Island's #1 wrestling podcast, I've actually forgotten myself. But being this is the Monty and the Pharaoh from Indie Music Studios in Ronkonkoma, and the fact that they were talking to yet another champion wrestling star, one of the most powerful and talented performers from the wrestling franchise, and not to forget, well-informed and provocative interview questions asked and answered. It was such an interesting and entertaining hour, the questions nearly blew your head clean off. Now you've got to ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Do ya, punk?
What? Yeah. No, I'm behaving myself. No, I'm not playing in abandoned buildings. What? Again? Now, I suppose you had those people follow me again. Fine. Hey, this is Jimmy Farrow from Monty and the Pharaoh, and I want to thank all our subscribers. We have now passed 14,000 on our YouTube channel. But I want to ask our subscribers to take the next step for us and become a full-fledged member of Monty and the Pharaoh. Yeah, that's right, folks. There's 3 different levels to choose from. There's free shirts. There's free autographs. Just check it out and become a member of Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monty and the Pharaoh. Later. Those guys.
It's all, it's as Yogi Berra would say, it's 90% half mental.
Well, speaking of Baba Booey, you were a huge part of the Stern Show. Recently, we had Dr. Dre in studio from Yo MTV Raps.
Right.
And we discussed with him Scott Salem, the longtime engineer of the show. And basically, I'm sure you read it, but the post said that Howard would not help.
No, I skipped this. I didn't pay attention, and I don't know what happened.
Right.
I just was hoping that behind closed doors, Howard was handing them the money to take care of everything.
Right.
And I just chose to hope that that's what went down. I have no idea. They called me for that article too.
Gotcha.
And I said, I don't want to talk about it, because no matter what I say, either I'm lying or I'm bitter or I'm making it up. There's no win, because if I tell the truth and it's not controversial, what good am I? You know what I mean? So,
Right.
Yeah, Scott's a fucking idiot, and Howard's a cheap cocksucker, and Gary has bad breath, and fuck everybody,
Well, the last part's probably true. With that, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with the comedic icon, Jackie the Joke Man.
That's right, folks. Canine Corral. For all your dog daycare and overnight care, call 631-549-1544. That's 631-549-1544. And Nitro's Garage for all your automotive needs. Call 646-675-2349. That's 646-675-2349. For all your automotive needs, Nitro's Garage. Ask for Jack. The Monty and the Pharaoh Show is brought to you by...
Because wine is your second favorite four-letter word. California wine, New York attitude. Good fucking wine.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back to Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monty and the Pharaoh, seen every Thursday, produced out of Indie Music TV in Ronkonkoma, New York. Welcome back, the icon, Jackie the Joke Man Martling. Jackie,
was that on the level? Good fucking wine, or is that a goof?
Nope, that's a true wine.
Yes, it is.
They're a sponsor of ours, and I got to tell you, being a guest on the show, we're going to send you a bottle if you drink wine.
Jackie doesn't do wine. He only drinks Heinekens.
I don't drink wine.
He just drinks
But
beer.
I have a
Then you're fucked.
It's kind of ironic because I have a gigolo service called Big Fucking Cock.
Nice. Very nice.
Oh my God! Holy Limp Biscuit. Oh, I can't.
Do you also have an escort service as that it's called
The Gaping Vagina, yes.
Thank you.
What about us Greeks? Do you have something called corn shoot? Never mind. Anyway. Oh, my dear Lord. Well, this question's irrelevant for Jackie because it says thoughts on Howard being cheap as hell. So we're not going to go with that one. We've already got his thoughts on that.
I'll tell you a great story.
Yeah, let's hear
a
it.
great story. When I started doing Stump the Joke Man, so long ago, there was a place in Mineola called Chuckles. There was a comedy club called Chuckles.
Yes.
And at the end of my shows, I played Stump the Joke Man. But I had recently started on the Stern Show, and people were curious. It was so early on that people knew nothing. They really knew nothing. And people had questions. Because very early on, people would say to me, hey, I heard a rumor, Robin's black. Is that true? You know what I mean? It was that early on. And Howard used to tell everybody that he was half Jewish and half Italian because that would get him all of Long Island listening to him, because they're all the Jews and all the Italians. So he's half Jewish, half Italian.
Okay.
But as time goes on, people start thinking about what's going on. And I did my show at Chuckles. And I said, listen, let's play Stump the Joke, man. You can ask me a joke. But if you want to ask me about, comedy, or if you want to ask me about the Stern Show, whatever you want to ask, I'm wide open to it. And this guy stood up and he said, is Howard really half Jewish? And I said, yes. And he said, what's the other half? And I said, even more Jewish.
Oh boy. Oi.
It was the funniest ad lib I ever had. The place went absolutely berserk.
That is hilarious.
Jackie,
and that was after I was on the show for 6 months.
What was it like the first conversation with Howard when he contacted you? We all know the story that he listened to your tapes and stuff. What was that like the first time that you spoke with Howard?
Nothing. It was what happened was I put out an album, and then I put out another album, and then I put out another album. And I had 3 comedy albums, and I had cassettes that matched them. And she was my girlfriend at the time. Me and Nancy sent out packages to everybody we met. If I met you, I sent you. I don't know where that guy got the album, but I probably ran into him somewhere, or maybe he bought it at a gig, and that's where he got the What Did You Expect? Then when I put out my second album, I would send both albums. Like if you guys said, oh, we got a wrestling podcast, or we got a wrestling show. Oh, give me your business card. I'll send you my comedy records. I mean, I sent them forever. Now, before I even had records, we used to send cassette tapes of our band. I mean, I've always been a madman with this promotion crap. And then I had 3 albums out. In 1982, I had 3 albums out, and we sent them to everybody. Nancy and me packed up 3 albums, 3 cassettes, and all our promo, and sent them to so many people. And in those days, like, the albums cost money, the cassettes cost money, the postage cost money, the cardboard to pack them in cost. But I don't know what I was on my way to, but I was working my ass off. And then I got governors because they like 922 wine. My joke line is a whole other complete different tale, but 516-922 wine is still going. That created comedy on Long Island. And I was working down in D.C., and this guy said, hey, you should contact this guy. He just got fired from the radio, but he's moving to New York. They hired him for WNBC in New York, and I bet you he'd love you. So I got home, and just like we sent him to a million people, me and Nancy sent the 3 comedy albums and the cassettes to Howard Stern, care of WNBC AM. I never heard of the guy, didn't know from radio. You know, I drove around listening to the Eagles on cassette in my car. I was a hippie, played songs. I listened to my own music. I listened to the Eagles. I listened to Chicago, you know.
Sure.
And we sent the stuff. And a couple of months later, I mean, I think he came up to New York in like September or October. And this was February. And by this time, me and Nancy are living in a rented house. But the first Joke Land, my first actual, you know, what I call Joke Land is where I operate out of, was in my mother's attic. And I was sitting in my mother's attic and the phone rang and Nancy says, hey, that disc jockey Howard Stern just called. He wants you to call him. I said, all right. So I called NBC and I said, I want to talk to Howard Stern and returned his call. He got right on the phone and he said, hey, listen, we listened to your records. We think you're funny. And we're having a talent contest on the radio today. Over the telephone. People are going to call in and perform for us. Do you want to come in and be one of the judges? And at the time, I'm working at Governor's in Levittown, and this is New York City, Rockefeller Center. It was a pretty easy answer, you know. So I said, well, I'll be right there. And I drove in, and it's so funny because I walked in, and it was Howard and Robin and Fred. And I sat down. And that's exactly who was there the last day in 2001. The last day I worked there was Howard and Robin and me and Fred.
Wow.
But I walked in there and sat down, and I never really did radio before. I'd get interviewed once in a while when I was doing a gig, but not even a lot because I wasn't that famous yet. You know, it's funny, I used to go on with John DeBella in Philadelphia, but it wasn't really doing radio. It was kind of hanging out. But I walked in and sat down and just had a great time for 3 or 4 hours. And at the end of the show, Howard said, man, you're a lot of fun. Why don't you come back next week? I said, sure. So I came in once a week for free for 3 years.
Wow.
What?
So I paid my dues. I paid my dues.
You sure did.
Jackie.
Slowly but surely passing them notes and ideas and making them funnier. And then he got fired and hired at K-Rock, and then when he went to the mornings at K-Rock, I joined the show, and then pretty soon I was on full-time, and we went to Pluto.
Yeah.
That simple.
That you did.
Jackie, fan Bon Lewis out there says you have a degree in mechanical engineering from Michigan State. Do you miss doing anything in that field?
No, for one very good reason. I never did anything. The only thing I did in that field was I actually dropped out of college in spring of '69 like everybody else, and I failed a bunch of courses. And
And Sever and Dan, thank you for coming in. Thank you so much.
For having me.
Very rare appearance, you coming into the Northeast,
Well,
right?
I don't get out much these days, you know.
Yeah, well, but how are you holding up these days?
I'm I'm still killing it.
Still killing it?
Oh, I'm still killing it.
In front of live audiences?
Well,
How are you pulling that off?
No, it's, I
Okay.
go by a little bit different set of rules right now.
Okay.
What people don't, what's okay, have you ever watched the movie Fight Club?
Yes.
What's the number one rule of Fight Club?
What was the number one rule of fight? You're the fight guy.
Tell me.
don't talk about Fight Club.
Oh, there you go. That's right. So you can't talk about what you're doing.
Exactly. But
Dan, how old are you right now?
Wait a minute.
62, going on 63.
And you look like
well, it's
fantastic.
only because I put in a fresh coat here right now. Okay,
Oh, yeah,
it's like it's everything is white. It's snow white here right now. I mean, eyebrows, mustache, hair. I'm just glad I still have something that I can throw a little bit of product through, and I would actually give a shout out to them, but they're not sponsoring me yet, so we'll work on that.
Look at me. Well, maybe they'll sponsor us. We'll be all right.
There you go. It keeps the mustache looking dastardly.
Look at you.
Dastardly.
Yes.
Is Martling coming too? Dick Dastardly over here. What? Yeah.
Well, dastardly gives you triple points and a crossword puzzle most of the time.
Oh,
So
nice.
So let's jump right into politics. You happy that we have a new president of the United States?
Can I?
He's like, oh.
Don't listen. You only isolate yourself from half your audience.
I like to drive around this one, Dan.
Can we just go right on to the next question, because I don't think there's anything. I like to think of myself as a positive, rather effervescent type of individual.
Right.
So I would simply just say, next question, please.
Yeah.
Because I try to be at least kind.
Yeah.
I try to be kind.
Yeah.
Right now.
Besides, there's nothing positive involved with politics. I got you.
We live in a world right now that there's some people that need to be taken out and publicly flogged.
Oh, yeah, well.
Good old-fashioned publicly flogged.
Yeah.
Something like
We'll
this.
discuss
Bring back some old school stuff.
We'll discuss the list off the air.
Well,
Okay.
You're from Arizona, right?
Well, no, I'm born and raised Michigan, but I went to college at Arizona State. So I lived for a decade out in Arizona from 76 to 86. First 5 years as a student athlete, and then the second 5 years as a wrestling coach. And then job opportunity opened back up at Michigan State University, and I coached there for another couple of years. So I tell people that the sport of wrestling, I've been involved in now 6 decades. I started back in junior high in 1969, so I've got the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, 2000, 2010 and above. Well, now we're into the 2020s and above. It's kind of look like, is dance ever done? Oh, wait to be seen. I don't think I'm done yet, because although I may be 62 going on 63, I don't look it, I don't act it, I don't move it.
That's great.
So
now you're from Flint, Michigan, right?
Well, again, Montrose, Michigan. I always had to specify that, because a lot of my friends growing up, I went to Montrose Hill McCloy High School. They get mad all the time. Why is it they always say Coldwater? I go, they wanted, where do I live now? Yeah. So I say, I hail from Coldwater, Michigan now, but I've only lived there since, I think, 1992 is when I moved to Coldwater, Michigan.
Because you're famous from Michigan, and then also Michael Moore's from Michigan, too. What are your thoughts on Michael Moore?
Michael Moore?
Well, again, it makes it up. I mean, I hear things about, Michael Moore and a few other people, stuff like that. I mean, I'll just say he's a rather interesting cat. I guess, once again.
Would you like to beat his ass?
Oh, my God!
Or publicly flogged. Publicly flogged again. I mean, those are, I always look at it as, we're taking the best of both worlds. We always talk about how unfit a lot of our children are, so let's kill two birds with one stone. Let's take all of our physically unfit kids and let them go out there and do the flogging on those people. So
interesting.
We're killing two birds with one stone. We're giving the kids some exercise.
Builds up their muscle tone.
Yeah,
very interesting.
That's a good idea.
Fighting, wrestling, acting. You've done all these things. Which one do you like the most?
Well, again, the thing that's been my theme throughout my entire life has been my amateur wrestling career. So I mean, it is the vehicle that has opened up all these other doors. Because what I always tell people, because they tend to get it wrong, my first profession was professional wrestling. Mm-hmm. Most people thought I went to the cage fighting type of stuff, and I use that term cage fighting because the mixed martial arts term did not come about until, like, I think 2004, 2005, 2006, somewhere in that range. And it was a good friend of mine, Jeff Blatnick, that was working with the various athletic commissions, and he's the one that coined the phrase mixed martial arts. These athletes come from such a variety of martial arts background. It might be amateur wrestling, it might be boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, karate, kung fu. There's always some type of stand-up art with a grappling art that was combined. So he was a guy that had to kind of smooth it over, because a lot of your politicians, especially like a Senator John McCain, he was a big advocate of trying to do away with it and looking upon it as a very barbaric sport. Mm-hmm. And and I sort of became sort of a front man for them, because I was that guy. I don't have tattoo one on my body. And I work with law enforcement, corrections, air marshal, border patrol, militaries. I kind of look like G.I. Joe because I have a Dudley Do-Right chin and I have a mustache. I look like one of them. So it has served me well over the years.
How hard was it going from, the amateur wrestling into something like cage fighting?
Well, I mean, it was the hardest part, the cage fight, not. Professional wrestling, a complete 360. In amateur wrestling, I was great about, in amateur wrestling, you learn to tune out things. And what I mean by tune out, typically I'd be going to countries that a lot of other countries despise the United States.
You experienced this.
Oh, yeah. No, they despise the United States, but for different reasons. Again, most of it is because of what type of propaganda machine their government is spewing out about America.
Okay.
I mean, which is, if we want to fast forward to today, and all the propaganda that has been going on for the last 4+ years, and which will endure for who knows how much longer, but
long time probably.
But it's these other foreign countries, they have experienced this for a great deal of time, so that it was pretty common as I represented a United States team to be booed and stuff like this. So I learned to tune out the audience. And we even had to learn to tune out the referees and stuff like that, because typically they were from some part of the communist bloc. And there would always be 3 referees. There would be a main referee on the mat itself, but then there would always be 2 side judges. In order to actually score points, 2 out of 3 of the judges had to confirm, was that a 1-point takedown? Was that a 2-point conversion here? Was that a 4-point throw? And you had always had 2. There would be a lot of times there would only be 1 referee calling it, and then as you looked over to one of the side judges, the side judge would be either tying a shoe, looking the other way, stuff like this.
Getting coffee
again.
Okay.
But then, but when the Russian opponent or whatever. Fortunate that you're going to get that rep that came from that communist bloc, they would be getting their points. So to be screwed over, to be booed was pretty much commonplace. So half the time I said, when you walked out there as an amateur wrestler, you had to not only beat your opponent, but you had to beat 2 out of 3 of the referees on top of that.
Right.
Now, that's a big difference between that and now professional wrestling. You're looking for a certain reaction from that crowd. What is your persona? If you are that heel, I want that negative reception from the crowd. If I'm that baby face, I'm looking for that positive reinforcement, the cheers, the yays, and the whole nine yards like that. The referee is working with all of you.
Sure.
Because they don't want to see this. So they're part of the show. So I had to rewire my brain an entire 360. But what I tell people that my first profession was, I was a professional wrestler first. And the one element that I took away from professional wrestling that served me well in the cage fight world is this psychology.
Psychology.
To know how, when I go to this location, I know how to get that audience to do exactly what I want them to do.
Seen here out of Indie Music TV in Long Island, New York, Ron Konkema. We have the honor of having these 2 great superstars, Mr. Shane Douglas and Mr. Sandman, but we're going to call him Hack.
Okay. I'm on board now.
My brother gave me that name when I was 5 years old. He was like 8 years old, so I've had it since then.
Beautiful.
That's how I got in WCW. Nash is walking up to me in the hallway one day, and he goes, you're not using the Sandman name. They're worried about getting sued. He goes, what do you want to be called? I said, Hack. He goes, okay. Literally, it was like a 10, 15-second conversation.
That was difficult. What was that, because of Metallica with Sandman?
No, it was because, I own the shit, and I prove them that I own the shit, but they're worried about Sandman comic book and Sandman fucking concrete company in California suing them.
Sandman comic book, Neil Gaiman, DC Comics. Okay, that I can.
I used to wear his shirts to the ring, actually, but nobody knew what they were or anything.
Oh, you used to wear the striped shirt?
The Sandman comic shirts. He had a couple different ones, like 4 different ones he sent to me.
Man, you should have wore that Sandman striped shirt. That would have been fucking sick. I wasn't even thinking about that, right? Oh. Well, as long as they pay you, who gives a shit, right? That's the way I think about it. That's what we were just talking about while we were off air. Shane asked what I thought was happening, how I felt about the country. I'm like, look, as things get better, I don't give a shit. But again, if they pay you, not to use Sandman, who gives a shit, right? It doesn't really matter. You're the gimmick anyway.
Yeah, but it would have been nice. And it would have been nice to, yes, and I signed a $750,000 fucking deal with them. It would have been nice to have the same wrestling name pretty much your whole career.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Not a lot of guys can say that. You know what I mean? You had a 30-year career and you had the same name the whole time.
And on booking level, you were coming in as a ECW legend. I mean, to me, I was like, why is he not called Sandman? Oh, what are you gonna do?
Oh, and then they made it Hardcore Hack, which I hated because there was Hardcore Holly. I fucking hated that. Complained nothing happened.
Yeah, that kind of ruined it for me too.
Shane, real quick, I never realized that you actually broke an ECW, broke Pitbull number 2's neck. Is there some kind of discrepancy going on, whether it was real or you?
It was real. I mean,
it was fucking real, dude. The halo and everything. Yeah.
Here's the funny thing about that was that he all day long, I was going to do a single drop DDT. And he kept telling me he was going to take it like a DDT. And I said, I kept telling him, no, because my weight's going to pull you off. Instead of coming straight, you're going to get pulled to a side and cause what's called a Jefferson fracture. Well, he kept saying it all day long, even though I would tell him the reason was not. I figured he was fucking with me. So I come off the ropes later in the night and give it to him. And instead of getting that boom bump, that bounce bump, it was like a thunk, like it hitting concrete. And I looked over and I saw Gary roll into the apron. It looked like he was selling. And later that night in the dressing room, he's going, I got a kink in my neck, and he keeps jerking his neck around, right? So Monday morning, Todd Gordon calls me and said, "Did you hear about Gary?" I said, "No." He said, "He's in surgery right now. You broke his neck." Because Todd and I used to always rib each other, right? I said, "Todd, I ain't falling for it." I said, "He was jerking his neck all over the place Saturday night at the building. He's fine." So I didn't buy it the whole week, like till the next week we get to work, right? Gary's got this thing screwed into his skull. And I was like, oh, my eyeballs went boing, 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 like, holy shit. He had a bad fracture, too. The doctors told him had he not had such a thick, strong neck, that it would have killed him or crippled him, one of the two. And,
dude, I broke my C4 in half in a match with Cactus Jack. Totally my fault. It's a spot that I dreamt of doing with a table or whatever, but I got cracked by the chiropractor the next day, and Russ was wrestling the next weekend.
Wow.
Didn't know it until a couple years later when I got hurt in that junkyard match in WCW. Went to the hospital. They gave me a CAT scan. I told them I said they thought my neck was broken right away. I'm like, dude, I've been hurt worse than this. My neck's not broken. So finally, by about 6 a.m. in the morning after the MRI, they're like, yeah, you're right. This was broken like 5 to 10 years ago.
Holy cow.
And I was walking around with a fucking wrestling with a broken neck for years.
You get killer weight. You got to share.
Fucking dude, I don't know. I'm pretty lucky, dude.
It's weird to say it, because when I was getting off the OxyContin in the hospital, I'm in there for like 3 weeks, and I'm watching TV one day, and all of a sudden I thought I was having a stroke. My whole body, I went blind. My whole body stiffened out, and right after this happened, like a seizure, the nurse looked at me and she said, "What the hell was that?" And I said, "You tell me." Well, they started running tests and everything, and after 4 or 5 days of tests, biopsies, MRIs, CAT scans, x-rays, the doctor came in and said, "When did you break your neck?" I said, "I've never broken my neck." He said, "No, you've had a broken neck." He said, "The only thing that causes this is infection, surgery, or broken neck." I said, "Well, had to be the infection because I never had surgery and I never broke my neck." So they went down and same thing, put you in the MRI machine specifically for the neck now. Came back and said, sure enough, bilateral fracture of C3. But like I always told people, the doctor then and told people since, in wrestling, your neck and back are always sore.
Yeah, sure. They're both hurting me right now a little bit.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's constant pain. It'll be that way for the rest of your life. On a cold, rainy day, forget it.
Do you get up every morning in a lot of pain? Is that
No, because I have such a sedentary life right now, and it's not like I ain't hopping out of bed like I used to. You know what I mean? Now it's more like pull a chair over, push up on that. Take your time.
Yep. On the very controversial crucifixion angle, obviously, between Raven and the Sandman. Shane, is it true you brought Kurt Angle to this particular event where this happened?
I didn't bring him. How that happened was he had been offered, I think, $1 million to do one appearance for WWF, and turned them down because he had just come off the Olympics with the gold medal. I think the guy got screwed. Like, he wasn't one of those guys that like cashed in and made big money from it. Mm-hmm. But he was still real guarded about his image at the time. Yeah. I connected to him through Mark Madden at Paul's behest, and I spoke to him on the phone. He was very nice, and he said, "I was going to be very careful." He said, "I can't be involved in any kind of crazy shit or whatever because," and I got it right. The guy's trying to build a career. So we come to the building, this happens, and Paul, all I heard was like, and Paul Heyman's running down the stairs from the crow's nest as fast as he can. He said, "You better get up here right away. Kurt's losing his mind." Well, I didn't know what was going on. I said, "Over what?" And he pointed to me. I thought I went, "Oh, right," because I promised him that would happen, right? So he came down, and he was hot, but he, once we explained to him and everything, he was fine. He sort of calmed down a bit from there. But Kurt was, I just saw him a few weeks ago. He's always been very gracious, very easy to talk with, reasonable, and he was hot. Again, you can understand, but he understood. And then, like, the part that would never happen today, we didn't want that leaking out to hurt him. Mm-hmm. So we pulled all the Blackjack and Linda Rufo and Bill and George and Bill Apter, pulled everybody back, George Tahinas, and explained to them and said, please, and they didn't go out for a while. I mean, those pictures stayed kayfabe for a while. And, I think once Kurt saw that, like, he was, I think, even more relieved that, that we were living up to our word. And just one of those, but again, the whole thing happened over the freedom that we had in ECW. Sure. Right? Like, Hack and Scotty were in charge of their angle. I was in charge of my stuff, whoever I was working with. And, so something like that happens. That's how we always ran every show. Paul would give you a finish, and you might get that 5 minutes before match time. And the rest of it was up to you.
Did you?
5 of 8, dude. He doesn't even have the card put together yet.
It sounds.
We were the only company that ever advertised just people. Didn't even advertise matches, dude.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this: like in today's wrestling, right? I guess they got it from the movies, but they show you every match that's going to be on before you. Isn't there something lost with that whole thing? Like, wouldn't you rather just be like, don't know what? Like, for example, I got a choice of watching some old movie I've seen 100 times, or AEW comes on. AEW shows their whole lineup, and I'm like, forget it, not watching this crap tonight, moving on.
They tip their hand right at the beginning of the show. Here's everything you're going to see. I prefer surprise.
Right.
Let me have a couple of surprises. Vince McMahon in the old days used to say, on this show you're going to see Mil Mascaras. He didn't say who he's fighting.
Right.
You're going to see him.
Yeah.
So that's all changed too. Just out of curiosity, Shane, did the crucifixion angle make you feel uncomfortable at all?
No.
Sam, were you like, yeah, this is the greatest thing ever, let's do this?
I loved it.
He rules. I mean, come on.
I loved it, dude. You're always looking to be the first to do something.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Cigarette, cane, fucking beer, 5-year-old kid in the ring, dude. You're always looking for something to be the first something, dude.
Right. And what happened 6 months later?
They did it on WWE.
Thank you. Not as good either.
Sandman, C4P is asking, does Triple H ever send you royalties for lifting your gimmick? I don't know what this is about. Are they saying they stole your gimmick?
Is he talking about Stone Cold?
Well, Stone Cold.
I guess. I don't know.
Stone Cold didn't steal my fucking gimmick, dude. I went out there, drank a fucking 6-pack of my answer, smashed it on my head, and bled before I got into the ring. Stone Cold had a beer after a match.
I never saw Stone Cold.
That's not stealing my gimmick
either. By the way, were those Marlboros?
Camel, non-filter.
Dude! He's great. He's great. Yeah, me too.
I don't know if you guys know this, but now
Strikes.
the lawyer who is representing a lot of the past WWE stars that have passed away is now bringing a court case to the Supreme Court against the WWE.
Really?
For brain damage against all these wrestlers. I guess they went into Stuka's brain. Are you okay?
What's he talking about?
What do you guys feel about that?
It went into Snooker's brain.
I enjoyed it.
He enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it.
There you go.
Dude, I was at that company for a short time, you know what I'm saying? And I was doing a lot of fucking shit like that, you know what I'm saying? So to me, Well, one, I want to get in his Hall of Fame someday. and if you get on the lawsuit, there's no chance of that, dude.
Right.
And two, but I just wasn't there long enough. You know, if I had my whole career there, it was ECW, maybe.
Right.
But.
Well, how do you feel about that? With Vince seems to be bearing the brunt of every wrestler who's wrestled in the last 40 years. What about the guys?
Well, of course, because he's the one with all the money.
But what about the guys who spend most of their career with guys like Crockett and WCW?
I don't know. So
NWA?
to me, that's like me. That's why I don't feel that I really should be part of it.
Right. Why should Vince be responsible for guys who never even got here, or some of them?
The flip side of that would be if I own a business and I sell you that business, and there's a bunch of liens against that business, you just bought the liens as well. Vince now owns all the.
But where does the NWA sit? Because WCW he purchased, but the NWA still exists, and most of those guys work for the NWA that I'm speaking of. You know, these guys from a long time ago.
But from a do they just own the name, or is it any kind of corporate?
That's a great question.
I don't know.
What do you mean NWA still exists?
It still exists.
It does?
Talking about NWA Power, which doesn't.
Yeah,
I don't even know
the
what that
National
is.
Wrestling Alliance title is still out there.
Oh, is that it?
It's
okay.
still out there
Surprised it
on a
was
very
called
small
that.
scale, but it still does exist.
Is that Chicago?
I'm not sure.
No, I think in Atlanta they're doing it, right?
Is that where they're
I think
based
so.
out of?
But don't hold me to it. I'm not
It
an
looks
expert on it.
the visual look of the show looks like the old 10th and Techwood studio.
It's like you're watching Georgia
never seen what
Championship
channels
Wrestling
it
a
on?
little bit. Well, it
YouTube.
was
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
But
I don't think it's
the
going
pandemic
anymore. I'm not sure.
crushed it. They lost their momentum, and I haven't seen them on recently. So, but it was interesting. It was old school. It was like watching an old Florida Championship Wrestling show or something like that. It
Oh,
was
wow.
very
Florida
interesting.
Championship Wrestling.
Kind
baby.
of dug it, you know. I thought it was
Speaking
cool.
of Vince, he's getting older, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, sooner or later that time's going to come, I guess. If either one of you had to, talk at his funeral or speak at his funeral, what would you say about him?
I'd say thanks, dude.
Me?
I would
Just
say
get up there.
thanks.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, thanks for letting me live. That helped me live my life stream.
There you go. There
Shane?
you go.
Well, I mean, you can't argue with success, right? I mean, the guy, no promoter previous to Vince McMahon could have ever imagined the business to the level he took it. To be a publicly traded company, to be making billions of dollars with no fans, and he's really pulled a rabbit out of a hat with this. But I think, in full honesty, you'd have to give both sides of that, right? I mean, he did incredible stuff with the business. The one thing that I take umbrage with Vince on is I remember him saying to me in conversations in several interviews before and after. I'm sure most of the other guys in the dressing room at different times, that his goal in taking over the business from his dad, buying it from his dad, was he wanted to transform it and bring it into the 20th century then, right? I guess implying that it was still being run like the 19th century. And he did. He succeeded beyond anybody's wildest dreams, except the talent is still being paid in the same manner it was being paid back in those dark ages of wrestling. I still have my old contracts, and I pulled them out last week for my podcast, and there's a clause in there that, I'm paraphrasing, that you could work for any other promotion on the planet except, and it listed all, like New Japan, All Japan, ECW, WCW, any place you could make a living.
Right.
When you look at it, the IRS has 20 or 21 criteria. If you wanted to file your taxes as an independent contractor, you have to meet all 21 of those. 20 out of 21, you're not an independent contractor. So to me, a real independent contractor would be able to say, hey, Vince, next Monday's my kid's 21st birthday. I really want to be there, so I won't be here next Monday. And then the week after that, I'm going to fly down and hang out with my friends down in AEW. And while I'm there, I might as well pick up a paycheck and perform for them. That would be a true independent contractor. I think we all know the joke of what would happen if you try to pull
Well,
anything
you
like
could have, but then he would just terminate his agreement with you.
Bingo, right? So your contract would be ended. But as soon as you accept it, from the way I interpret it, again, I'm no attorney, but with the way I interpret those 21 criteria, is that, first of all, like 6 of them don't even loosely apply to the loosest interpretation of the door business. But as a house painter, if I decide to come paint your house today, you can't tell me I can't go paint his house tomorrow or Hack's the day after that.
Right.
And I can, as long as we don't have a written contract saying I'll get it done the X amount of time.
But again, if you went and did Hack's house, I could turn around to you and say, you're not going to do any more of my houses anymore.
True.
Right?
True, right. And your house will be half painted. So it's the stuff that's really blowing my mind right now is that any kid, anybody, they should all be firing their attorneys for having signed a contract that gives Vince the rights to their legal name. That is my...
They are married, and AJ came out for a public appearance, and that's great. Great. That is unbelievable that she showed up at the big event. If I was at the big event, I'd probably want to get an AJ Lee autograph and picture. But when I went to look, and again, I wasn't going to the big event for COVID, but I just want to read a few things to you guys, and just bear with me here. Here's the format of the signing. And Maddie, you weigh in too, because this is pretty impressive. A 2-hour signing station from 10 to 12 and a 1-hour professionally posed photo op station includes on-site 8x10 print from 2:15 to 1:15. No biggie there. Okay? No selfies during the signing. If attempted, you will be thrown out of the event with no refunds from Glamour, Under the Stars, and Sorrentino Promotions, or the big event New York as a whole. No combos being sold. No individual autograph tickets being sold. No inscriptions. Go ahead, Matt.
What?
Hold on, there's more. No personalizations. Tickets are as follows. No substitutions or changes. 2 autographs. 2 autographs, not inscribed to you, just AJ Lee autographs. $300. 4 autographs. $500, but that's only for the first 60 people. 4 autographs. I said that. VIP package limited to 10, the first 10 in line, 4 autographs, and Divas belt. $999.
Jeez.
Professional photo op photos. No autograph included. Now, I don't know what a professional autograph is, by the way. Photograph. I don't know if they had a cameraman there. Did they use... they took your phone... Someone call themselves a professional?
Yeah, you take a DSLR, put in like a white backdrop and any cheap light, and you're good to go.
And that makes you a professional photographer. $150.
I bet that's what they're doing.
Includes 8x10 print on site and digital version. Now, what's a digital version? On your phone? Is that a digital version?
So they just send you like a JPEG that's signed?
Line starts at 8 a.m. No refunds, no exchanges. So, with all due respect, everybody out there. By the way, Fat Boston Wales bank account in the house. Let's keep these legends working. Maria Davis, $300? Heck no, won't pay anything. No amount. So,
yeah, no way.
AJ Lee, if anyone remembers AJ Lee's story, she was a child who grew up in a very poor family, who discovered wrestling that changed her life. And I think you put the picture up, Maddie, of AJ getting an autograph from Lita. Now, Lita, obviously a WWE Hall of Famer. Now, do you imagine if the young AJ Lee had gone to the big event, going back in time or bring her back to when she was 8, and she went to the big event, and she had to pay $999 for an autograph and a photo.
Yeah. She would probably feel pretty bad for her parents.
I would think that she probably wouldn't even have the opportunity to meet her. So people would turn and probably say, well, it's the promoter. The promoter's the one that's greedy, right?
Everyone's greedy here.
But my point is, AJ Lee, you should know what your promoters are doing, right? You should know what your promoters are doing.
And how? Different promoter.
Joe Shipley, she's a joke. She is a joke, Joe. I got to tell you, everybody knows I can't stand Phil Brooks. I literally hate Phil Brooks. And now I officially hate AJ Lee, because to actually be that greedy of a human being and be part of something like that, Loose Cannon, thank you.
Yeah, meet your legend for like an arm.
$999. Think about this. She won't even inscribe it to, like, please sign it to Mike. Love you, Mike.
No personalization.
No personalization, because I'm AJ Lee.
That's literally minimum effort.
And I know Sorrentino Promotions, right? And that guy's a dirtbag, too. And he knows I think he's a dirtbag. And, Rick B., the crazy part is some people will still pay. Rick, you're right. It is crazy, bro. But here's the issue with that. Some people, like, they only have so much in their life, and they idolize someone so like these athletes they mean the world to them, and they'll do anything to meet them. But to rape these people that are in love with you so much, give it a break. I mean, seriously, when I read that, I was like, how in a good conscience could you even be part of something? What's that?
Yeah, she's straight up taking advantage of her fan base.
Oh, my God. $999, 60 people. Think how much money they made off of those poor people who are saving their money. Yeah. And again, you could blame the people, right? AJ order isn't worth more than $60 on a framed photo. You're right, Luce. Again, I guess it's to what, it's supply and demand. I get it. But there has to be a point where you just can't be this way. A mess solution. Don't buy a ticket to this event. Who could afford one anyway? You're right, man. It's like that's 3 car payments or 2 car payments, and for a photo with your hero. It reminds me, if my father's watching, growing up, I was a huge baseball fan, and we grew up on Long Island, and Dave Kingman, we used to, the batting cage is out there, and Dave Kingman came to the batting cage. So, you're a kid. You're excited, right? It's Dave Kingman. And if anybody didn't remember who Dave Kingman was, he was one of the great home run hitters, and he played for the New York Mets, and he was actually kind of a hero in New York for a long time because he hit these monster home runs. And so my father brings me, the line is, I don't know how deep. It's got literally, and this is not an exaggeration, it's got to be 400 people long, 500 people long. We sat out there, I don't know, 8 a.m., 2 p.m., Kingman finally shows up. He goes to the batting cage, takes a couple of swings, and he goes home. And I just remember, like, how crushed I was as a young man. And when I mean young, I think I maybe was 6 or 7. And it's a responsibility of an athlete or someone at that level to ensure the happiness of their fans. And when I mean the happiness of their fans is if you're going to be in the limelight and you're going to be part of something where people look up to you or want to be part of you, or just want a piece of you in a good way, not a bad way, you have to have that responsibility to your fans. And AJ Lee should be held accountable to the money that was charged at the big event for her fans to see her. She should be embarrassed. But again, guys, think about it this way. Old Phil had to give away ice cream pops a couple of months ago, which we knew was Khan's money, but only seen here out of Indie Music TV in Long Island, New York. I want to thank these 2 wonderful gentlemen for coming in, the Patriot and... Wait a minute. Is it Buff Bagwell or Marcus Alexander Bagwell? Or Metal Maniac?
What?
What are you trying to
do?
For
starters, nobody knows the third name. So
okay.
God bless him. Love him to death. But nobody knows that name. So I think we can stick with probably Buff.
All right, we're going to stick with Buff.
He's the stuff.
And just so everybody knows, Farrow was a little upset over the last interview, and Buff and Farrow were having a conversation about it. What seems to be the issue?
You tell me.
Well, I was explaining to Buff that we've had a lot of great guests on, and Buff was one of them in the past, and that, the basic concept of an interview is just to have a conversation. A conversation involves two people, not one side of the ocean! And so that's my issue with our previous guest, if I may.
And then Buff gave some beautiful advice to you, right?
Which I just simply said, have you ever seen him on television?
No.
And I haven't.
I haven't.
No.
So there's two.
Not in South Carolina.
Two superstar legend wrestlers that have never seen him on television.
I got a friend from Comac High School.
And I hate to say that because he's a super, super nice guy.
Really?
But let's just call it like it is. I mean,
got to be a star.
Y'all bring a guy on here that's not a star, he's not going to give you a star interview.
Right.
So do you if you get a guy like that, or you just do you shuffle them off, like they come up and they try to just go get away from me? Please. I'm the Patriot. I'm Buff Bagwell.
Like Dell, do you hit the toilet button on the console when that interview goes that way? Do you just hit the toilet button?
I want to, but no, you don't. You just.
Let me ask you this: how did he get onto the set?
Yeah.
Did you have to? Promise somebody to bring him on to get them on?
No, we had him over Skype, internet type of that type of thing.
Okay.
He was in Hawaii.
Never heard of the guy until 10 minutes ago.
I heard his name,
and
I went.
Breath air until 10 minutes
Yeah, I heard his
hot,
name, and I went. Who is that?
What's the Pharaoh so hot about? Yeah, interesting.
You'll get over it, brother, Daddy. It'll be fine, Daddy, brother.
You'll get over it, brother, Daddy.
He's getting on the surfboard right now. He's coming. Here we go. 7 weeks later. Oh,
all right, so we got two interesting things I want to discuss, right? Number one, we'll start with Buff. Obviously, everybody knew you had a pretty horrific car accident.
Yes.
Do you want to tell the fans out there what happened and how's it coming along?
It's kind of a long story, but long story short is just a bad car wreck, and it affected my right knee tremendously. I was on a walker, 3 or 4 weeks ago, and now I'm down to back in the gym, and gained my 30 pounds back I lost, and got back in the gym, and so I'm a month away from. I mean, people, I tell them they think I'm crazy, but I'm a month or two away from being in the gym and in the ring. I mean, this is that simple. I mean, there's nothing that's ever kept me down before. I broke my neck in '98 and had to go out and do an interview showing my scar because the insurance company wasn't going to pay WCW for all the stuff because they didn't believe there's no way this person could come back this fast and look like that if he really broke his neck.
Right.
There's no way. So literally, we had to make up an interview, and me and Scotty went out and just made one up with me and Gene, and I just showed my scar and everything to prove everything.
And they went in through your throat for that too.
Yeah,
right?
they go to the front right here. Yeah. So I've used it 3, 4, 6, 7. I got 2 titanium plates and 8 screws. That ain't counting the knee, the hip replacement, 5 surgeries. I go in for 1 hip replacement and get 5 surgeries.
But you look good, though. That's what really
What's
most
my fucking
important.
name?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm Buff.
That's right. And you got the stuff.
I mean, Jesus Christ.
I'll openly admit, I'm man crushing on you right now. You're all right.
I love it. No, I love the hat.
It's not, there's nothing wrong with having a simple man crush on somebody, right?
Not at all.
And maybe even just as difficult as your accident, Dell, if you want to chime in, President Trump was voted out of office. Do you have any thoughts on that?
You'll never convince me he was voted out of office.
Okay.
You'll never convince me 80 million people voted for that bumbling idiot. He can't carry on a conversation. He's yet to have a press conference. Everything's been done by email.
Well, just to make it clear, bumbling idiot you're talking about?
Joe Biden.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be very clear about
it. Okay, yeah. Right.
The dopey uncle in the basement?
Yeah. That guy.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure.
The one that got dementia.
He is the current occupant of the White House, but you'll never convince me that he won an election. And I don't need videotape from a voting precinct in Atlanta, Georgia, where they're pulling suitcases out from under tables.
To understand
All I need to know is that voting laws were broken leading up to this election. We also know that in states all across America, according to the U.S. Constitution, the only way you change voting laws is through state legislature, not through judges, not through Supreme Courts of those states, and all those things were done, and that's enough right there to tell me that it was a bogus, rigged gimmick.
Will all of this result in another party being
No,
formed?
I don't think he can stand another party. That's
Right.
my opinion.
Right, I agree.
No, I don't think another party has a chance.
It'll hurt the Republican cause, in my opinion. if there's a-
Absolutely, it will. And I don't care what Mitch McConnell says. I'm just giving you Del Wilkes' opinion. You asked me, so I'm going to open up. And tell
Fair
you.
enough.
He is the Republican Party, he being Donald Trump. It's not Mitch McConnell. It's not Nikki Haley that was the governor from my home state of South Carolina. You know, she blasted him 2 weeks ago, and then after the CPAC speech, she couldn't kiss his rear end fast enough. She's not the future of the Republican Party. Right now, he is, and whoever he deems to be the one that should run for president in 2024. So that party's been red-pilled. 75 million people, including myself, were red-pilled. I don't even refer to myself as a Republican anymore. I'm a conservative. So,
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
Excellent answer.
So, I think we could agree with
Yeah.
most of your comments,
Yeah,
for
I'm-
sure. That being said, are you going to support Joe Biden and his efforts in fixing what's wrong with the country at this point?
No. You know, I was a big Rush Limbaugh fan. I still am. And I listened to Rush for 32 years. And I remember when Obama was elected in 08 and inaugurated in 09. And Rush made the statement on his radio show, I hope he fails. Because I want the same thing to happen to Joe Biden, because Joe Biden is for open borders. Joe Biden has eliminated tens of thousands of jobs by cutting the Keystone Pipeline, by halting border construction on the wall. Therefore, just the mass murder of the innocent in the womb. So there's nothing that he does that he stands for that I hope succeeds, because that's against every principle I have. So I
Everything you
hope,
believe in.
I hope that in 2022 we can take the House, get the House back, and we'll see what happens in the Senate. But no, I wish him no success, because he has a very radical leftist, progressive, socialist agenda.
How did you feel? Speaking of that, this is something that has irked me for years. How did you feel when Obama allowed the animal from Iran to come to the United Nations and speak with dignified leaders of the world about how the Holocaust never happened?
Well,
how frightening is that we actually allowed somebody like this maniac to come here and speak the words of hatred and obliteration to another country, and we're all just going to sit there and be like, oh, that's okay. He's allowed his opinion. At what point do we draw the line between right and wrong?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. It was appalling, but a Democrat has never met a socialist, dictator, murderous thug they didn't like.
Interesting.
And that's the way I feel about it.
Interesting.
So, both of your opinions, where did Donald Trump or former President Trump go wrong?
I will give you my opinion, since I've been...
Too much Twitter?
No. I don't have a problem with that.
I wonder sometimes if he had been a little more like Reagan, maybe a little less restrained.
Well, here's what I tell people all the time, all right? And I think I mentioned it today to you.
Yes.
Put aside personality. Set that aside. I think he needed Twitter, and I think he used it properly. I have no issue with it.
Fair enough.
Name me a policy where he went wrong. If you can name me a policy where he went wrong, he created the greatest economy this country's ever seen, the highest unemployment ever for blacks, black women, black men, black teenagers, Hispanics, Asian women, the strongest economy we've ever seen. He made our presence felt around the world. He was bringing our troops home. He killed Soleimani. He killed al-Baghdadi. Joe Biden eliminated Dr. Seuss. Wow, that's a big deal.
So that's another subject. I don't want to go to, because I'm going to ask that question from you next.
So
but
to answer your question, I don't think he did anything wrong. I think a pandemic fell in their lap that was politicized, and they manipulated mail-in voting through that. They beat him over the head in the media, the mainstream media, where he got about 2% approval before they said anything good about him.
Right.
They took advantage and politicized this mail-in voting, and they politicized this pandemic. And if he would have gotten 100 million votes, Joe Biden was going to get 105. He never stood a chance after 2016.
So let's bring it back a little bit. What could he have done different? I agree with 98% of the things that you're saying. The issue I felt was he needed to just reel it in a little bit, because his comments.
Why?
A lot of the women of this country were not weren't happy with what he was saying. Right?
Who gives a fuck?
Well, they
There's always
take
that.
up 50% of this country, right?
Well, so what?
Probably more.
He lost a lot more than that.
Well, yeah, but we lost an opportunity of maybe having one of the greatest presidents of all time.
He is the greatest president. Besides Reagan, one of the greatest presidents, I think, of all time. There's no doubt about it. I mean,
I personally love when he put
every time you hear about a president, I told Dale this today. Every time you hear about somebody
running
running for president or whatever, it's always they came from a middle class family and they fought their way up. We need somebody running this country that does know what $1 billion is, that does know what $1 trillion really is, and not the one that's grew up on a farm and broke, and it's always that story. And he knows how to run big things. So I think we lost a great president.
But we lost 4 years. Another 4 years, and maybe if he could have
4 years of everything, he did everything perfect.
Do you think he?
Everything he said he did.
Do you think he didn't listen to his cabinet enough?
I've got no idea.
I don't think that's it. One of the reasons I no longer will identify myself as a Republican, that most of them are as bad as those on the left. It's a uniparty. They are. They're globalists, each and every one of them. And he had as many within his own party fighting him as he did on the left, just about. He really had, at the end of the day, when this thing was coming to an end, he had very few allies. And I mean very few. That party with the R beside it hated him just as much as the ones with the D beside it. And that's how I feel. So I just think his goose was cooked. He caught him off guard in 2016. And in 2020, 75 to 76 million people voted for him. That's never happened. We've never had an incumbent, anybody running, get that many votes. But this thing was rigged, dude. He wasn't going to win if he'd have got 110 million votes.
I agree.
Especially with somebody with dementia. Just throw that in.
Listen, the guy that didn't even get out and campaign. I mean, does all that add up? People are eliminating people now from social media to say none of this adds up. This is fraudulent. Well, it doesn't add up. They're telling us now that we don't see what we see with our own eyes. No, you don't see that. Well, the heck I don't.
Well, this isn't the first time this country's had a rigged election, right?
No.
It's happened numerous times, right? I mean, again, I don't have proof, but enough reading, I understand this happened.
I think Kennedy, Nixon.
Absolutely.
Probably a good example of it.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Just a different group got Kennedy in.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Yeah.
Right?
Sam Giancano and people like that.
So you brought up Muppets and Dr. Seuss. So how do you feel being part of a country right now that supports a song called Wet Ass Pussy as number one, and that's okay, but we're going to sit there and try to shut down Dr. Seuss books and put rated R status on the Muppets?
It's insanity.
What's happening to us?
It's insanity.
What's going on?
I covered this on my podcast a couple of weeks ago. I'd never heard of this guy. His last name is Wallen, a country music singer. And he was in Nashville one night where he lives. He'd been out with some of his buddies. And he gets back home, and they're out in the front yard, and they're yelling and screaming and cutting up. And they're revving their engines on their big pickup trucks. And he's a big deal in country music. I'd never heard of him. And I can't remember his first name now. His last name was Wallen or Whalen. And he calls a taxi for one of his buddies that he did not want driving home. And when the taxi gets there, he's telling the taxi to, and I don't use that kind of language, but take care of my blankety blank man, make sure he gets home safe. And he said it several times, take care of my blankety blank man and make sure he gets home safe. And then the third time he said it, he referred to him as my boy, but he used a racial terminology.
Yeah,
right.
That's used every day in music, that's used every day in society. But because he's white, he almost got crucified for it. And all the platforms that play music on the internet won't play his music. His record label suspended him. They didn't release him because his record sales went through the roof, or his music sales went through the roof, because people responded in a way that said, this isn't right. This guy's being punished and being beat down with a heavy stick because he used the word. He used a word, and they say it's an endearing term. That's my buddy. That's my blank. That's my man. You know, they refer to him in that. And y'all know the word I'm talking about.
That's my boy.
And but yet this guy was getting crucified for it. But if you're black, you can say that, and it's a term of endearment. You can sell millions of records using that word, but a white guy uses it. So it's all across society that's going on now.
Well, did you face that while you guys? Now, look, you guys are famous professional wrestlers. Did you see a lot of that in your profession, that type of banter back and forth, or was it taken to a level where people got upset? You could use the whole Hulk Hogan thing, or you can use the Booker T thing. What did you guys see there? Or is the company just?
I personally didn't. I mean, I heard, because I was a lot younger and was very lucky to get the spot I got, and was lucky enough to have teammates like Dale Wilkes, and they put me in good spots, so they took care of me and put me in the right places. But we heard things like, so and so suing them, so and so suing them, and I heard things like that. But but years later, I've heard that they got millions of dollars, a couple $1 million over it.
Wow.
And so just things like that. I mean, well, I heard, but you probably know.
I come from a different era. I'm a little older than him. I played college football at the University of South Carolina from 1980 to 84, and it was a different deal back then. And being in a football locker room can be a tough environment if you don't have thick skin. And we would really, really ride each other and say things to each other that, man, if you said something like that to somebody out in the street, you're going to get in a fight. So I heard that kind of banter back and forth in the 80s in a college football locker room and on a college football field. It was sort of commonplace, and nobody got offended by it. We were